It's story time.
Good morning. Welcome to Story Time. I'm Kimberlyn with Life's Work Yoga. Today I want to share a story that is actually only in hindsight become something that I'm excited to share. But for years, I kid you not, for years I lived with a sense of shame and dread about this particular story. Maybe you have a similar story in your history. My hope is that in sharing my story, in being a little bit vulnerable, you'll join me in what I call the Witness Protection Program, the Witness Perspective Program, meaning there is always something good if we can work through the process of reality and perspective. Today's story time is actually it's actually a story that I've never shared with anyone. It's a story that I have, in all honesty, tried to forget because it's a story that kind of lingers in the back of my mind as kind of a what not to do. It's a story that is honestly laden with some shame and disappointment. And I share it with you because in hindsight, I now recognize that this story and the consequence of the story is really where I first touched my own inner witness, my ability to see things from outside my current experience, from my sensations of the moment. And so I share a story of my 7th birthday party. Now, let me give you some background here, is that I was 7. We were living in Texas. Now remember, I'm one of, at this point, 6 children, right? One of 6 children, the eldest daughter. And so one of the ways in which my parents kind of coped with having 6, soon to be 7 children, was that we only had guest birthday parties. We only had outside guests join us to celebrate our birthdays on set years. And if I remember correctly, they were the 7th year, the 11th year, and then I think the 16th year, something like that. They might have varied a little bit from kid to kid and justified that it was every so many years. I don't actually remember the specifics, and my mom has all the photo albums, so I can't look to see. But I do remember specifically this birthday. It was a big deal for me. I got to invite, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 friends from school. And my mom had made me a dress, and it was, we called it a square dancing dress. I don't know that that's actually relevant, except that my parents were square dancers. Yeah, those kinds of dancers. And this had a lot of frill, like layers and layers and layers of ruffles, so that when I twirled, the skirt came up to be parallel with my waist, and yet, you know, all the petticoats underneath were modest enough to pass my dad's preferences. So anyway, I was wearing this new dress. It was an outside party, which wasn't something that I was used to. 1, because I didn't do parties, and 2, because we were in Texas. And my birthday, unlike everyone else in my family, I kid you not, everyone else in my family has a spring-summer birthday from March to June, right? March 3rd to June 26th. Everyone else, all my other siblings and both my parents all have birthdays in that 4-month span. But my birthday is in October, which is always a little bit of a weird season, particularly in the Midwest, which is where I grew up for many of my, most of my childhood, right? So Texas was a bit of an anomaly for that, for those few years, in which case it was nice weather. And so we had an outside play day for my birthday party. But what I remember specifically is having a temper tantrum, sitting on the bricks of the fireplace, not the mantle, but whatever the hearth of the fireplace. Why we had a fireplace in Texas, I don't know. Maybe I'm mixed matching houses and memories, but I was having a temper tantrum, and I wasn't happy about the fact that I was having a temper tantrum. And that's what I mean when I say that it was my first taste of this witness perspective. I can remember seeing outside of myself and looking at myself in this beautiful new dress, having a fit, and I was crying uncontrollably. And the reason for my crying was because I had not won the game of red light, green light. Do you remember that game where one kid is at the front and everyone else is in a line, and as they turn their back to you, it's a green light, and then you can go, and as soon as they turn around to face the group of kids, you have to stop, and if you move, you're called out, right? So honestly, it's not my favorite game, and it's a bit of a, I don't know, power up and over, because there's no debate, right? It's whoever's being that green light who gets to decide who moves. Well, I don't remember who it was. I have no idea who was being the red light, green light person, but I remember being very upset that I didn't win. So much so that I had to go inside for what was not then. We didn't call them timeouts at the time, but it was essentially a timeout in which to help myself recalibrate, recenter. And I remember that I was just so disappointed that I cared that much about winning a silly game. Yes, but also I think it was about having this dream day, this day that was all about what I wanted to do, right? And this was it. This was my first birthday party. So I think I had built up some anticipation, some expectation, and all of that anxiety had erupted when I got called out of the game for moving. Now, who's to say? But here we are now, many, many years later. I'm about to celebrate my 49th birthday in the next week. So I guess this makes sense why these birthday stories are coming up. In fact, I'm going to share with you my 16th birthday story next week. Maybe it was my 18th. I don't know. Anyway, in celebration of birthdays, really it's an invitation to celebrate where you are in finding your own witness perspective. I tease that it's the Witness Perspective Program, a little bit like the Witness Protection Program. Sometimes it takes a little bit of recalibration to get comfortable with this idea of who we really are in the world. Who we really are is not just about the primmed and the proper and the fine-tuned and the edited. Who we are is really at the core of the life's lessons that we've had to suffer through, endure around, right? The Bhagavad Gita, right? So if you're familiar with this epic tale of Arjuna, we're reading the Bhagavad Gita for our Life's Work Yoga Book Club currently, and I'd invite you to join us for that. And I'll be talking about specifically a couple of the chapters in there in Coach's Chat, which is a weekly broadcast, not unlike this, but we dive a little more into yoga philosophy. But one of the things that I wanted to just kind of refer back to in the Bhagavad Gita is this idea that our quest, our life's journey is about discovering that Atman, that most centered true self of who we are. So in that sense, the witness perspective is what allows us to see the difference of who we're being and who we are. I knew, right, in that moment of tear-filled sorrow that it wasn't going the way that I had hoped my day to go, that really wasn't who I was. And it was the dissonance between the temper tantrum fit, the disappointment, and who I really was that caused me to have that kind of outer body experience, so to speak, of seeing myself perhaps as a little bit selfish, seeing myself perhaps as a little bit privileged, seeing myself as perhaps a little bit too committed to having my own way. Now, I like to think that I have grown up since then, but we all have those moments, no matter what age, no matter how many times we've learned the lesson that it's not all about me. The truth is, we all suffer a little bit with this sense of attachment to things that we want, that we think we should be getting, that oscillation between the desire, the attachments, and the anger for when we don't get that. Those attachments, in fact, the Bhagavad Gita names as being those that are most detrimental to us discovering and living our own true best self. So I don't know what your birthday parties were like. I would love to hear them. What stories? What celebrations? How did you celebrate your birthdays? And maybe when was it that you joined the Witness Perspective program and could start to discern the difference between who you were behaving as and who you authentically are? Some of us are still on that journey because it's a continual unfolding. But we're in this journey for the long haul. We're here to continue to find that union between our body, minds, and our breath, and between each other. So thank you for letting me share this story. And I hope that you can hold it in a way that helps you see your own story with more compassion and more tenderness. I trust that we all have moments that perhaps we didn't show up as our best self. But did we learn from that so that we could show up more authentically, more transparently, more compassionately for the next step, the next place in which we are seen, heard, and show up? Be well, my friends. May you breathe deeply, move freely, labor lovingly, and live vibrantly. Namaste.